missed each other last week after all the snow? So, thank you to Terry for filling in for me because I know what to make you count the snow last week. So, I have a few announcements this morning. So, first off, directly after service today is the Safe Sanctuary meeting. It's right here. And it's required for anyone who volunteers with the children and recommended for everyone. So really, even if you don't plan on helping with children, you would all need to know what to do if you saw something. So that's really what this meeting is also for. So please plan on attending. And then tonight at 4 o'clock is going to be junior, 5 o'clock is going to be senior. Financial giving statements for 2018 are available today. See Beth Portal today to get them, and then they will be mailed out if you do not pick them up. And then 2 more announcements. Grief Share starts again this week, Thursday, 7 p.m. here at the church. And then I know it's really cold out with the sun's out, so we might need to start thinking about summer camp. So it is time to start registering for summer camp before those spots fill up. So maybe it's a good way to get over the cold and start thinking about those warm days ahead. Those are all the announcements I have. Please prepare our hearts for worship.
Well, every now and then, we do have a mission moment in our church. This is an opportunity for our church to tell you just a little bit about what we're doing as far as reaching out to our community. And today, we're going to invite Kathy Falstich to come share with us.
Good morning, church family. I am Kathy Falstich, co-team leader for missions. I want to give you an update on our Feeding His Children ministry. We're now entering our 4th year of feeding folks at Clare United Methodist Church in the south end of Columbus. This area is extremely economically depressed and there are a lot of needs. This is our own small mini missions trip that we take each month. As many of you know, we began this ministry with the United Methodist Conference Outreach Grant in 2016 and received funding for 3 years. That grant has now ended, but we still have money in the account, so we continue to feed. Over these 3 years, we have prepared and served about 2,500 meals. We have moved our meal dates from the 4th Saturday to the 3rd Saturday of the month. We still need volunteers to help with food preparation the preceding Friday, and we still need volunteers to help finish food prep on Saturday morning and to go with us to Clare to serve and then clean up. I would challenge you to step out of the boat and come help prepare food, or even more radically, come with us to Clare to serve food. We also serve generous helpings of God's hospitality and love and acceptance. We have been blessed so much by this ministry, and we have such a good time that we can hardly believe it. And the Holy Spirit is with us each time we serve. If you feel called to join us, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, for that message, and I do challenge you as a church. If you have never gone, do that sometime this year. Go and bless your heart to help people when you help provide food and water for those who are hungry and thirsty. So I challenge you to do that. As we're here today, we're going to be entering into a time of prayer. If you're visiting with us, there's a couple things I want you to know. The first one is we have these yellow cards, if you want to find that. Everybody in the church fills these out every week, so go ahead and start filling them out if you haven't already. But I do want to just draw your attention to, we have a spot for your prayer request for you to write those down, so feel free to use that. There's also a box there for you to check. If you don't want this information shared, you only want the pastor to know about it, just check that box. It will not go into our bulletin, it will not go out to our prayer circle, but it will be prayed over by myself if you want that to be known. That's a chance to do that. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is we have a couple people that are interested into a pizza with the pastor. And so we just need a few more people. So if a few more people check that box if you're interested in just knowing a little bit more about our church, or just talking a little bit about the church, or just having a good time. If you're new to the church and want to just explore it a little more, check that box for me and we'll set up a time pretty soon we can have a get-together after the service. As far as something else just to let you know about, we do have your prayer concerns that are listed in your bulletin. I want to add a few to the list here today. First of all, you see printed there already, there's a prayer for Hazel Boggs. That was printed. Hazel had a setback this week. She's now at the end of her life. And so she's on palliative care over at Mount Carmel East. I do want to remind you the family has asked for no visitors at this time, except for the pastor. I have been faithfully gone over there and visited with her. If you do have a relationship with Carl, feel free to reach out to Carl, just send him cards, or if you are close to him, feel free to stop by and meet with him at this time. But we do want to pray for that family as they enter into this season of transition, as well for Hazel. She ends her life, and the family and the grieving process after that. Of course, let you know more information as far as times to visit with the family and things like that as we know in the future. We also want to lift up the nephew of Joyce Myers. His name is Bobby Maynard, I believe. And I do want to just lift him up. He's had a terrible setback himself, and the family is just in a grieving process as far as hoping for the best. So we're having some medical things there. So please lift up him and that God would heal him, as well as for that family that's going through this hard time. We also want to lift up, I didn't make it in here quite yet, happened right afterwards, but Charlotte Barker, we want to continue to lift her up. She's in the ER. And my understanding is they're still processing what exactly is going on. She had some vital signs and things that were off at the doctor visits, and so she's now at the Mount Carmel East herself as they try to figure out just a few more things of what the tests are coming back at. So we do want to lift those up. And of course, I also just want to lift up, we had the last meeting of the opioid crisis, intervention team type thing going on for our community this past week. We know, of course, for many families and many people, this is a continuing struggle, and so we want to continue to lift that up in prayer. for those that continue to fight this epidemic, as well as those families that are affected by it, and as well as those first responders that are doing their best to help people, and those counselors and churches and church programs that are doing their best to make an impact in our community. We want to continue to lift those up as well. Let us now enter into time of prayer. Most holy God, your people come here today to remind ourselves of your love for us. We gather together to bless you for not only the blessings in our life, but your holy presence. The God, you have taken us who were once wretched and far from you, and you have brought us to be a new people by the redeeming power of Jesus Christ and his blood and his resurrection. As we hear today, God, we remember that story. We claim once again that you are not only the God of the universe, you are the God who is for us. And so we, your people, come here today to tell you our praises, to sing them to you. But also, Lord, we remember that you are the good God who meets us in our need, who meets us in our hurt, who meets us in our failures and our faults, and yet you rise up and bring us to your presence again. And so we, your people, we come here not only to bless you, but to lift up our hurting hearts. Especially, Lord, those who come here today to seek your special touch. May you bless them and all that is upon their hearts. Lord, for our prayer requests that we lift up every single week to you, we pray for those and those that are new here today that are brought to our altar. May you bless them. And we know, Lord, that you hear them, and may you answer each and every prayer request that's brought to you. God, as we're here today, we also lift up our own souls, knowing that so many times we choose evil and so many times we choose wrong. God, forgive us. And for those of us here today that maybe have never known of your forgiveness, may that forgiveness rain down, Lord, as we confess in our hearts our sins to you. Lord, for those that are here today that are having physical ailment, or whether through sickness or through trial, through body and afflictions, Lord, we do pray for healing. And God, we remember you are the master of this universe, and thus the master of our bodies. If you simply say the word, we can be healed. And so God, we pray for that word. And we also pray for acceptance if your word is not yet or even no. Lord, as we're here today, we lift up those in our congregation and those that we know that are going through times of mourning and times of grieving. We especially lift up those in our church that even this very hour are wondering if their loved ones will pass. And they're sitting at their bedside, doing their best to be a presence. and helping usher in that person to the other side of eternity. So Lord, bless those families and bless especially the hearts of those who are leaving this earth and going into your arms. God, we also lift up our hurting world. In so many ways we see it fractured, too many to list and name here. Oh God, where people are jobless, provide them work with their hands. Where people are in addiction of all sorts, deliver them. Lord, where people are making horrible choices and hurting others, convict their hearts. And as we're here today, we once again pray for peace upon our world. And may those in military service and our first responders would come home tonight safely and be with their families and know once again that we have your protection. God, we continue to pray that same prayer. You taught your disciples all those years ago. We boldly proclaim it. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Will the ushers please come forward? we ask for your blessings this week. In your son's name we pray. Amen. Today's scripture reading comes from 1 Peter 4, chapter verses 3 through 6. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and detestable adultery. They are surprised that you do not join them in their recklessness, wild living, and they heap abuse on you. But they will have to give an account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is the reason the gospel was preached, even to those who are now dead, so that they might be judged according to human standards in regard to the body, but live according to God in regard to the Spirit. This is the word of the Lord.
Good morning, church. Good morning. For those joining us online, hello to you and welcome, as well as those that will watch this later at a later time. We welcome you as well. Before the sermon proper here this morning, I wanted to take a moment, that is, to have a pastor's privilege moment. Is that okay? Okay, all right. I figured it would be. I didn't ask. So as you know, our church a while ago had been discussing at our ministry table, and this is actually pre-me. I wasn't here, I was born. Before me being here, at our ministry table, we had different conversations, and one that, of course, kept coming up was the opioid crisis in our community. And as you know, I'm sure this conversation went on for some time, and at one point there was someone bold enough to say, I'll lead this. I'll do something. And I'm going to pull together the community. I'm going to pull together our resources as far as, police, as far as counselors, as far as doctors, as far as everything we can possibly do to address the opioid epidemic in our community. And so it's easy, of course, as you know, to talk and talk and talk. It's another thing to say, here I am, Lord, send me. And so I wanted to take just a minute. We have had, of course, different meetings over the year. And I've got to be, I think, at all of those as far as I know, as far as the four. This happened this year. But an amazing time. And truly, if you didn't get to go any of them, you should regret that because they were top-notch excellence. Not just good. I mean, these were worthy of coming to, and everybody that could have come should have come. But I wanted to take a minute because it's not every day that someone says yes to the calling as big as that. And for the countless hours, and for the countless people that she had to contact, for the countless organization, and making sure everybody was in the right place, as well as just all the prayer that went into this, not only on our church, but on her behalf as well. And I wanted to recognize her here this day because we had the final meeting. So Jean Ann, will you come forward for just a minute? Before I got some flowers, and I just want to warn you that the base is very heavy, but as you can see, our church stood in your honor to honor you for the heart that you had. I just wanted to tell you briefly that watching lay people say yes to God, and following it, stepping up in faith, that's why I became a pastor. And so I have to say today, just to honor you is one of the biggest honors of my career, to do this here today.
I have a choice. I mean, God spoke and you do it.
Yeah. Well, we know at any juncture you could have said no, and you didn't. You said yes. And so just on behalf of our church, we've already celebrated you a little bit. Now, I warned you, this is heavy. So just, I called and said, give me the heaviest bass you got. But we wanted to just give you these flowers so you could just be honored here today and to say thank you on behalf of this church. Yeah. Jean Ann, just to not only give God thanks, but also to pray for the work that's yet to still be done. So Lord, as we're here today, we do thank you for Jean Ann. We thank you for a life that's been called to make a difference in our community. And how, Lord, she said yes to you. We celebrate that here today. And for all the hearts that are here that maybe, Lord, you're tugging on for them to say yes, they haven't quite said yes to something, give them boldness to see what happens when we step out in faith, the difference we can make. Lord, we know for the opioid, it's not over yet, and this is a big, huge thing that's going to continue on. Help us, Lord, not to become idle, and raise up more people to help with this epidemic, that our communities and our children and our adults and our elderly can all be free to make those choices, to not be addicted, and to be the best person they can be for their family and for our community. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. While she's taking a seat, I just want to remind you, we're going to be putting the bulletin again, but we do have coming up an naloxone training just right down here at the Presbyterian Church in just a few weeks. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically the medicine you give someone when they're overdosing to save their life. And so it's going to be, the training is free. The naloxone, they're actually going to give you some to carry around with you that day. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you take the time to do it because it's free. And honestly, it's a benefit for our community. I'll talk more about it later. Why, even if you're on the fence, you need to go. I'll tell you that later for another day coming up here. But will you pray with me? Lord, may the words of my mouth, the meditation of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight. The Lord our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, for those that are not been with us, we have been in a sermon series called My Pet Rock. And I had promised you that I would try to look for my pet rock. I can't even make it to my basement right now. I've been a busy man lately. So hopefully it still exists. And my wife and I this week, we're sitting down and we said, okay, we're going to actually have a time in February that I'm actually going to be out of the office. Going to take a vacation week. It's going to be one of those stay vacations, but it's called Unpack the House that we still haven't unpacked when we moved, and actually get rid of stuff that we need room for. So if I find my pet rock then, I'll bring it in some Sunday, even though it's not the sermon series will be over. You can admire and awe in my pet rock. But of course, if you haven't with us, there's a whole reasoning of what's behind this name. You have to go back and see the first couple episodes of this series. You can watch them online, find out why it's called Pet Rock. But my pet rock is actually, what we're doing is a study of the book of 1 Peter. So as you know, Peter was one of the apostles of Christ, and after the death and ascension of Jesus, the apostles start going around and telling everybody, hey, you won't believe it, but a guy rose from the dead, and he's God, right? And to get to tell the story, and of course as churches began to grow, people began to come to the faith, churches were out among the areas, and they would send letters. A lot of times they couldn't make it on their own, so Peter was one of the apostles going around to the different churches, preaching in different areas. And he's sending a letter to a bunch of different churches, actually. It's a whole group of them, in the area of what you would think of Western Turkey, more or less, in central Turkey. And so he is writing to these churches in this letter, and he's giving them advice. And really, if you weren't here last week, I'm sorry for the ice and snow. I think maybe God didn't want you to hear it, but maybe I have to give you a quick synopsis because it's sort of the key of this whole entire book. Because every time you see one of the letters of the New Testament, what we mean by that is when one of the apostles is writing to a group of the churches, a letter of the New Testament, or we might just call it a book because it's more than just, hey, what's up, how you doing, send my greetings. It's way more than that. When they write these books, these letters, there's something they're addressing, right? There's something going on in that church that they couldn't be there themselves, so they're writing on a purpose. So it's not just to say, here's what to believe about Jesus. There's actually a practical application element to this that's saying, hey, here's what's going on in your life. Here's how the gospel meets you right now. Here are the changes you need to make. Here are the things you need to keep doing. Here are the ways that you need to understand Christ differently and all these ideas. And so Peter's writing to these churches for that specific reason, of what it was. And here's what it was. If you missed it, here you go, in a nutshell. Churches, and thus also here today for us, choose to suffer for doing good. That's not a very popular theme for us today, right? Us today is to say, hey, if someone's treating you wrong, make an issue of it. Tell about it on social media, defame them, do everything you possibly can to undermine them. And Peter's saying, hey, church, if you get wrong for doing good, it's okay. And he's going to go on and explain this. And that's really the biggest theme, the uniting factor of this whole entire letter, is to write to these people that were suffering for doing good. And they were probably like you and I asking, well, why? And what should we do if we're suffering and getting persecuted? What should we do if we're getting put down by society? What should we do in these situations? What should we do that the gospel has been changing the world? And how do slaves, what are they supposed to do with their masters now that Jesus Christ has come? What happens in those situations? Some of those very practical things. And so when you start understanding that key to this book, you can go back and even look at the weeks we've already done. Remember the first week we talked about joy? And really it was in the sense of this whole entire deal. Remember what Jesus Christ has done for you. Why is he telling them this? It's because he wants to remind them that even in the midst of their suffering, remind them what God has done for them. Right? Don't lose sight of that, church. Even though you're being persecuted, don't lose sight of what Jesus Christ has done. Remember the joy that comes from what Jesus has done that's far beyond your circumstance. And in that chapter, we didn't talk about it, just so you know, there was also a part of be holy. And at that, you just go, okay, well, God's holy, and you just say, hey, be holy, it's just a general thing. But it becomes much more important as you read this book. Because what he's saying to the church, and what he starts to say, what they realize later, is not just be holy, even though the world comes down on you, even when you think you're not to your advantage, even when it's much better business not to be holy. Suffer if you have to. Go through it if you have to. In the second week, we looked at this word that keeps showing up in this book. It's called, in the Greek, eklektos, but a lot of times you see in your Bible written as chosen. It can mean that. It can mean appointed. It can mean all these different things, but the root of it, what it truly actually, like the heart of what it's trying to say is, this is a word you use when someone is precious to you. This is a word that you use when someone is dear to you, that you put value in who they are. And Jesus not only says this to people, but Peter wants to use this word very specifically for these churches. Hey, you might have forgotten because you're getting persecuted, so you may have lost sight of it, but you are precious to God. And so in the midst of your suffering, don't forget that. Last week again, we looked at this was a big idea that he really kind of fleshes out. Be willing to endure or suffer, that is. Not only that, but bless and honor those who do it to you. Ouch. Right? I don't like that as a 21st century American. I don't know about you, but I'm like, gosh, stick it to the man, right? But nonetheless, he's saying, hey, you know what? Now, you're going to honor God. If they tell you to do something that's not honoring God, you don't do it. But at the same time, honor God, but as far as you can, even if they persecute you, do your best to honor them. And he fleshes out right before that 3 unique ways. Again, if you weren't here, just a quick nutshell. If the government is against you, you honor them as best you can. Slaves, it's unfair. And hey, when you go to worship, there's no slave or free, there's no master, no nothing that doesn't exist. Do your best, though, to honor your masters. Hey, women, and then remember, you have to remember each church is different as they're right in different areas of the world. But Turkey, this area of Turkey was very patriarchal. So women, obey your husbands, submit to them as best you can. And even reminds them, hey, some of them, your husbands aren't even faithful followers. Don't give them reason to hate Jesus because you go against their teaching. Now, if they tell you to do something, obviously, that's against God, don't do it, but do your best, all you can, to bring honor to them. And as we'll see later, he comes back to talk to the husbands as well as other people that have power. You may ask yourself, well, if everybody just submits all the time, how does the world change? And the answer to that in the Gospels comes a little differently a little later. We won't get to that today. But I wanted to just point out, we're going to be talking, as we read in our verses here today, about something very specific. And because this isn't all that's in these books. There's much more you can kind of focus in on and kind of small deals. But this is the overarching theme of this book. Hey, church, do good even though you don't prosper. Do good even though you suffer for it. Do good to those who do you harm. And don't give anybody any reason to hate Jesus Christ because you don't honor them. But instead, make it their shame that they punish you for things. Make it their shame that they talk down to you and slander you. Make it their shame that they do all these things because it will become crystal clear as time goes on. It's a way of what you would call maybe pacifism in a lot of different ways. And there's a whole huge church conversation we'll get into some other time of just war, pacifism, all those type of things. There's aeons of Christian understanding of which one is the right way of understanding the Scripture. But nonetheless, in this sense, what's the church? Hey, church, honor God. Do your best to honor those people, even if they put you in harm's way, and even if they treat you badly. And in fact, in this chapter 4, as we've been looking at just different chapters and things that go on in it, he's going to say that a little later. We're not going to cover it too much because we've already covered it, but he says those words, right? Suffer, if you just want to look it up, it's in chapter 4, verse 12. Dear friends, do not be surprised at the painful trial you are suffering as though something strange were happening to you. Get this, but rejoice that you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. Now, I'm not going to preach there yet, but just kind of go, right? Just kind of flesh it out just a little bit. In other words, he's going to remind you once again, he's going to come back to this theme over and over and over. Hey, church, not only do you need to suffer, but actually, when you sit there and think about it, rejoice. Why? Why would you rejoice, right? Well, one, Jesus Christ suffered. So it kind of tells you you're doing well. If the world hates you, good, right? Pat yourself on the back, you're doing things right? In the sense of that Jesus Christ was suffering for being him, and the world hated him. Well, guess what? It should hate you too if you're following him. But then also, and this isn't really brought up in 1 Peter as much as other letters that are written, but the second thing is those times of suffering are times of purification. Are times of truly showing you, putting a mirror up to your soul and your character, saying, here's who you are. Because the simple truth is, all of us can be nice when things are well. The simple truth is, all of us can treat people nicely when things are well. But what happens when you have a bad day? Right? What happens when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? What happens when it's not fair to you? What's your character? What Peter's saying is rejoice if you go through sufferings, because you know what? It proves your character is like that of Jesus Christ. And that's a powerful thing. But I wanted to go back because the main part of today, the sermon title is called Live Willingly. And what I mean by that is he says very specifically here in 1 Peter, he wants to tell us something. This whole time he's been telling us, building up to this, suffer, and all these type of things. And go through hardship, all these type of things. But he wants to make a point right here, is don't live the way you used to. And in fact, in Jesus' teachings, in all of the Gospels and all the letters in the New Testament, even the Old Testament, how God treats his people, there's always this element that when you meet with Jesus Christ, you don't stay the same. And in fact, if you are a follower of Jesus Christ here today, you know this very well, that maybe God's been bringing you along as you look back upon your life and you say, I used to be not so good of a person, but I got better. And then I thought it was good, but I learned later, through trial and suffering sometimes, there's some character flaws. I had to look in the mirror pretty hard, and Jesus used some things and brought me along. And I look now, I go, I feel pretty good about myself. But before I say that, I know God's going to do something. Then I look in the mirror and go, So, but we know we walk humbly with our Lord. But yet we know as we look back upon our life that yes, we're not perfect, but we're not who we were. That God has been taking us along and sanctifying our hearts and doing this. And he wants to remind them today about some very specific things. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. He wants to basically focus on the idea of specifically wild living. And I got to wonder, maybe these churches, like it was party-hardy cities or something, because why does he focus on these than other ones? But he focuses on these, and there's some reason why, and I can't really specifically say why, but he does. And he says, he's making this point. You are, he says these words, as a result, in verse 2 of chapter 4, he does not live the rest of his earthly life for evil human desires, but rather the will of God. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what the pagans do. Right? So he's just going to throw out some things for you. Right? Hey, it's in your world, and even though you're going through the suffering thing, do not be part of this. So he says, what the pagans do. They live in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, detestable idolatry. It sounds like a rock and roll party, doesn't it? Right? I mean, it sounds like woo, right? And in fact, if you go to any college on any campus, really around the United States, part of what you see, right, is this kind of no-holds-barred, binge kind of party type idea of, hey, you have to find yourself. You won't find yourself until you try everything. So go out there and try everything and do everything and live extravagantly and do all these things and do it while you're young, because of course you'll, as you get older, you get boring and have to have a job and a mortgage and boo, right? And there's kind of this thinking, right, of like this idea that we have in our culture of these ideas. I want to pause there, because it's real easy to say, hey, that was nice back then, but we don't really deal with that now. And of course, if you have your eyes open in our world today, that's a false notion. These ideas are well and alive today. If you need some convincing, let me just throw some things I researched this week out at you. So first of all, you talk about the whole drunkenness and debauchery and ideas like that. We all know it still happens today, but just to give you kind of an idea, I was looking today, this week that is, on the National Institute of Alcohol and Abuse and Alcoholism. It's actually a government entity, right? Okay, so this isn't like some dude just got his computer made up some numbers, right? Because, 75% of all percentages are all made up, right? I made that up right now. But anyways, these are actually people that have data and research to it. Like there's infinite, like this actually could exist. And so, they were looking at this idea, and they call it alcohol use disorder is the official name of any use of alcohol that's not appropriate. For people 18 plus, not even youth, 6.2% of the United States suffer from alcohol use disorder. That sounds like a small percent, but when you put it in numbers, that's 15.1 million people in the United States. And that's actually self-identifying. That's not like doctors said it. That's like actually people who are at the point of saying, yeah, I have a problem. And anonymously on the survey, they said yes. If you just break that down, men, it rises up to 8.4% of men. That's 9.8 million men in the United States. Women, congratulations, you're half that. 4.2, 5.3. Congratulations, you're awesome. Right? But nonetheless, the rate of death, if you will, from alcohol-related deaths is 88,000 a year. That makes it the third most preventable cause of death in the United States. And that's those key phrases, preventable cause of death, right? And that's just so you know, 62,000 men, 26,000 women die a year. If you just look at binge drinking, They had people self-identify with that. Again, this is self-identifying, so a lot of people maybe lied, maybe they didn't tell the truth. Of 18, people 18 and older, 26.9% of people binge drink at least once a month. Now, when you binge drink, you're not just having a little beer or dinner to kind of calm the day, right? When you binge drink, your whole purpose is to party, right? Your whole purpose is to either forget, or you're an alcoholic maybe, or you're out partying, or you're at some event or something like that. But your purpose is to get drunk and have some fun and see what happens. As far as sales, I was just kind of interested in this. They're going to put it in billions, but it's weird because it's like thousands of billions, so it's really trillions. But they didn't want to round it off because when you round off by billions, it's like a whole lot of money, right? So they didn't want to round off. So they 1,324 billion. So again, that's 1 trillion, $1.3 trillion. If you just want to think about it, of sales around the world in 2017. By 2026, if you're an investor, hello, here's your chance. 500 billion more sales a year. So in other words, it will be almost $2 trillion by 2026. It's there. And you sit there and you say, okay, well that's there. What about these other things? You know, the lust, the drunken, well, we talked about drunkenness, but the lust, the orgies, the carousing, and all these different things. I got on, this is one of those things that's really hard to find, but I got on what's Alexa. You know Alexa. What you may not know is Alexa actually is also a web trafficker. So if you type in Alexa and you go, hey, Alexa web traffic, you can actually look up all the different sites and see how much traffic they get, and it ranks them by how many hits. And it lags 3 months because it's in data they got to compile and do all these things. But as of 3 months ago, I just want to let you know this. Some of the main traffics on the web use would be what you think. Number 1 is Google, number 2 is YouTube, 3 is Facebook, number 4 is a Chinese company called Baidu. I don't even know, I think they're a search company as well. Number 5 is Wikipedia, which I was kind of blown away at that one. I didn't realize it'd be that high. But Wikipedia was number 5. And it sounds all good. You're going to kind of go through the list. You're going, okay, yeah, these make sense. And then a lot of them are Russian or Chinese, and other groups are in there as well. So you don't really know what they do. But if you filter out search engines, you say, we're not going to count those for a minute. If you filter out the social media aspects of like Facebook and Twitter and things like that, and you also filter out these online marketplaces. So in other words, if you search the internet, what's being hit by actually content, of what people are actually going to find content, not to buy something, not to say hi to their friends or things like that, but actually to either learn or to find something to consume. It's a little eye-opening. Number 5, and it's kind of, maybe count this or not, 5 is number 1, that is, would be Wikipedia, and it's number 5. Number 2 is Reddit, which is number 18. Number 3 would be Netflix, which is 23 on the grand list. And then number 4 is Pornhub.com at number 25. And it was blown away to look around the world, the top 3 around the world. And that's in the top 50, that is, of everything, Google and all that stuff. 3 of them were pornography sites. Now, some of these may have been more because they may have been Russian or something you can't read because it's written in Russian, so I have no clue what it is. But 3 of them are the top 50. And I was looking, actually just this morning, I was trying to research it, and it was, there's this app called Tinder, swipe right, you may have heard of it, right? In other words, it's a hookup, it's known as a hookup thing, where you just literally see pictures of people around your community, swipe right, and that sets you up to go meet each other. Now, hookup. 57 million people around the world, right, are using it. It's huge in places like India, but just to get that number is 4,000 swipes a second. A second, right? Swipes a second. It's amazing. And as you look at these lists of things, it's well known, hey, this is still here today. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still part of our culture, and as much as we think we may be past this, as much as we think of all these things, it is here. And first of all, most of us in this room are old enough to have a lot of life experience to see, hey, I've seen people live this way, and I saw them fall flat on their faces. Or maybe some of you here today are those people that fell flat on your faces and you woke up. But I just wanted to say a brief word in case we have any young people watching, you just haven't had enough life experiences, or young people in this room. It's kind of like that idea, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. If you live this way, the elements of your human nature die by these ways. You will not be the same person you think you are now. I know so many of my friends that live these ways, and they thought, oh, this is just a season of my life, and they found they couldn't get out of it. And just as we talk about the opioid epidemic, there are marriages that have been ruined from pornography. There are ways of people that they couldn't stop cheating on their spouse because they got addicted. There are people who hid their alcoholism from their spouse as best they could, and then all of a sudden the numbers came out about how much money they were spending on things. There are people that I've known in my own life and in my own family that's, try to hide it as best they can, and they go out and they come back, they don't even know where they were the night before. And when you talk with them, they talk about how much fun they have. As you sit there and talk with them, you realize this is not a way to live. And my simple recommendation to you, I'm going to quote to you something from one of my favorite movies, Cool Runnings. Remember Cool Runnings? Anybody? Yeah. John Candy. Remember John Candy? Everybody? Yeah. Now, the young people, you don't know, but you need to go back and do yourself a favor and watch Cool Runnings. Love that movie, right? But John Candy is the actor, that is, and he died a while ago, but he has a quote in that movie as he's talking to one of the people that were on the bobsled team. He says, he's talking about, hey coach, why did you cheat? Why did you do it? And he was talking about, I had to win the medal. And then the guy asked him, was it worth it? And he basically says, in these words, if you're not enough without it, you're definitely not enough with it. And actually, this is kind of something weird. With all my walks of life and everywhere I've been, it's always amazing to me. I've never tried drugs, ever. I just look back at my life, and there's no reason why some of my life I shouldn't have. Except this idea, I always knew if I wasn't happy without it, I wouldn't be happy with it. Right? And if you start thinking about your life that way, it's a really wise litmus test, what you should and shouldn't be doing, right? I mean, if you just apply that to your life, you can avoid so many different things. But Paul wants to remind them, hey, stay away from these things. You used to do them, but now you're in Christ, you're called to be different, be someone different. Then he reminds them these words that I want to remind you. They think it strange that you do not plunge with them into the same flood of dissipation, and they heap abuses on you. You guys remember Tupac Shakur? Anybody? Yeah, I didn't know that he was a gangster rapper in the 90s. It was my era as a teeny bopper. So I remember Tupac very, very well. And I remember Tupac died, and everybody in my high school was like, oh, Tupac. It was like, everybody's all emotional and stuff. Then Kurt Cobain, also died around the same time. Everybody's like, no, you're lying. Anyways, this was my era. So this is like my childhood. But here's the funny thing about Tupac. He was not a good dude by any measure of the stretch of imagination. He was known for theft and war and all this different stuff. But he was shot and killed. One of his famous sayings that he'd run around and say was, only God can judge me. And what he meant by that is, don't point out my faults. Don't do any of these things. Only God can judge me. And he's true to some extent. That there's and every lie has a little bit of false, a bit of a little truth to it. The truth is, yeah, God is the one who can only judge us ultimately. We're not really called to go around and heap insults and all stuff on people. At the same time, what the scripture points out, and what Paul is going to, or Peter that is going to say right after this, is God, hey Tupac, God is going to judge you. And he didn't make it a secret. And so, yeah, we're not called to be the judge, but we're called to say, here's what the judge is saying. Right? We're called to just say, here's the truth, right? Out in front of you. And Peter wants to remind us, hey, you know these people that you're suffering for? You know these people doing all these debaucherous things that are heaping insults on you? You know these people that are tearing you down? Don't forget in the midst of your suffering. Yeah, it's not only in your trial and what you're going through and a character example of who you are, but don't forget, it doesn't all get swept under the rug. Don't forget, everyone gives an account for your actions. And no one gets away. And anything that was hidden becomes uncovered, and anything you thought was only in your secret dark skeleton closet, it's brought out into the light. And the question is, did you follow Jesus Christ and say, God, I trust in you, for I know that you are my only hope? And he reminds them, don't live that way. And don't be afraid of those who live that way, that lord it over you. Suffer and endure. For this is how Christ lived his life. Let us pray. Lord, as we're here today, we thank you again for your word. And it is a powerful, powerful word for us today. That God, we live in a society that loves sex. We live in a society that loves debauchery. We live in a society that wants to say, let loose, who cares? Just have fun and party it up. And yet, Lord, we know in our own life, as we look at people who live that way, it doesn't end well for them. Even in this life, and Lord, as we discover here today again, even in the next life. That God, we don't want to be people but live as quote-unquote pleasing to you. We want to be people that live according to your will, and that truly have the character of Christ. So Lord, instill that on us, in us, that is, again today. Amen.
Please stand as you're able for our closing.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be in worship with you once again today. Quick reminder that we have the Safe Sanctuary training right after this. Again, this is not just for those who want to help, but this is truly something that pretty much everybody, you should stay. And I beg you to stay. And again, the reason why is if you see something, what do you do? And that question is going to be answered here today. And it's not only important in our church, but really it's truly important in all in society, because you are by law required to do something. So we want to train you in that today. So again, if you're not even going to help with youth or vulnerable adults, stick around. I promise it will be worth it. If you are going to be around, I just want to challenge you, not challenge you, I want to tell you, what you need to do is go over to our table just a minute. There's note cards there. You're going to need a note card and a pen, something, or a pencil, something to write with. So go ahead and grab that as we get set up and ready to go here. With all that being said, let's hear this benediction. May the Lord bless you, may the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.